Howdy folks, welcome to Camera Shake, where we bring you the insider scoop on all things photography and videography, giving you a unique opportunity to stay ahead of the curve. We spent literally hundreds of hours interviewing some of the most renowned photographers of our time, giving you access to knowledge and expertise that's not available anywhere else. As always, I'm your host Kirsten Lutz, and in today's episode, we'll be discussing how to capture emotion in your portraits with plenty of tips and techniques. So buckle up, grab a cold one, and let's shake it up right after this. Welcome to Camera Shake Podcast, episode 144. Oh, and by the way, I have one small favor to ask of you. We've got some incredible, amazing news coming up. So if you enjoy this podcast, please join the Camera Shake community over on camerashakepodcast.com. so that you're one of the first ones to know. You'll find the link in the description, or if you're watching on YouTube, it'll be right down here somewhere on the screen. But without further ado, let's dive right into how to capture emotions in your photographs. Whether you're a professional photographer or an amateur enthusiast, capturing emotions in your portraits can absolutely take your photography to the next level. In this episode, we'll explore the different techniques and approaches you can use to create portraits that truly capture the essence of your subject's personality and emotions. So why is capturing emotions in your portraits so important? Well, emotions are what make us human. They are what make us unique, interesting, and compelling. And as photographers, our job is to capture those emotions and share them with the world. When we create portraits that emotionally engage, we create images that resonate with people and make them feel something. After all, that's what great photography is all about. That's what I think anyway. One of the most important things to keep in mind when capturing emotions in your portraits is to establish a connection with your subject. This connection can be built through conversation, listening, and empathy. When your subject feels comfortable and relaxed, they are more likely to express their emotions in front of the camera. So take the time to get to know your subject, ask them questions, and listen to their stories. This will help you establish a connection and create a relaxed and authentic environment for your portrait session. I do that all the time in a project that I started a little while ago called 3 Heads in a Row. The whole idea there is that I spend a little bit of time with the subject beforehand. And because in this particular project, I'm trying to push them over the line and give me some really extreme facial expressions, it's really essential that I can connect with the subject and that, they trust me, because it's all about creating that trust and building up that trust. And conversation is absolutely vital for that. And one of the tricks that I use for that is that I ask him to pick out 3 different objects to bring to the session. So it could be, something that they use as part of their profession, or it could be something that, is just part of a hobby that they do, that they like. And so it's really easy for me then to use that as a starting point for conversation. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So once you've established a connection with your subject, it's time to start capturing emotions in your portraits. One technique you can use is to focus on the eyes. The eyes are often referred to as the windows to the soul, and for good reason. They can reveal a lot about a person's emotions and personality. When you're taking portraits, try to focus on the eyes and capture the different expressions and emotions that your subject displays. This can include joy, sadness, fear, anger, or any other emotion that your subject is feeling. Another technique you can use to capture emotions in your portraits is to play with lighting. Lighting can have a big impact on the mood and the emotion of your portraits. For example, bright and warm light can create a sense of joy and happiness, while dark and moody light can create a sense of sadness or even melancholy. You can experiment with different lighting setups to see what works best for your subject and the mood you want to convey. Post-processing or editing is also an important aspect of capturing emotions in your portraits. A well-processed portrait can enhance the emotional impact of your image. You can use tools like color grading, contrast, texture to create a specific mood or feeling. For example, you can use warm colors and soft textures to create a romantic or nostalgic atmosphere. You can also use desaturated colors and harsh contrast to create a sense of drama or tension. In addition to these techniques, it's important to remember that emotions are not just about the face. Emotions can be conveyed through body language, gestures, and even the environment. For example, a portrait of a person standing on a mountaintop can convey a sense of freedom and empowerment, but a portrait of a person sitting in a dark alley can convey a sense of fear and vulnerability. So when you're creating your portraits, think about the entire scene, not just the subject's face. Now, let's talk about some of the practical tips for capturing emotions in your portraits. Here are my top 6 tips to get the best results. And by the way, some of these are just common sense, so you think about it. So tip number 1 is use a fast shutter speed. Emotions can be fleeting, so it's important to use a fast shutter speed to capture the moment. This will ensure that your images are sharp and focused, and that you don't miss any important expressions or gestures. Remember the importance of the eyes? Eyes need to be sharp. Tip number 2 is really just be patient. Capturing emotions in your portraits can take time. Don't rush the process, and be patient with your subject. Take your time to build a connection and create a comfortable environment for them to express themselves. All right, here's tip number 3. Direct your subject. While you want your subject to feel comfortable and relaxed, you also want to direct them to create the desired emotional expression. Don't be afraid to give them specific instructions, such as look up, tilt your head, or now give me that face. Not that I ever say that. Well, maybe sometimes I do. Okay, next tip. Use props and surroundings. Props and surroundings can help enhance the emotion in your portraits. For example, you can use a favorite book or a musical instrument to convey a sense of passion or creativity. I use props all the time. I mentioned it earlier in the 3 Heads in a Row project. In fact, the whole idea of my 3 Heads in a Row project is based on props. Or you can use a natural setting, like a beach or forest, to create a sense of calm or freedom. Next tip, experiment with angles and composition. Different angles and compositions can create different emotions and moods in your portraits. For example, a low angle can create a sense of power and dominance, while a high angle can create a sense of vulnerability or weakness. Experiment with different angles and compositions to see what works best for your subject and the mood you want to convey. Don't be afraid to take risks. That's really my next tip. Capturing emotions in your portraits can sometimes require taking risks and stepping outside of your comfort zone. Don't be afraid to try something new and unconventional. Always think out of the box. You never know when a bold choice might result in a powerful and emotional image. Let me just say a quick thank you to our sponsor, DVE Store. DVE Store's mission is to help you create better video and provide you with the tools necessary to explore your creativity. If you have any digital video equipment needs, whether that's camera equipment, audio gear, or lighting, and much more, you can check them out at dvestore.com. Thank you to DVE Store for the high-def video, and of course you can find a link to DVE Store in the description. So now that you have some tips and techniques for capturing emotions in your portraits, it's time to put them into practice. Remember to establish a connection with your subject. Focus on the eyes, play with lighting and post-processing, and think about the entire scene when creating your image. And don't forget to be patient. Direct your subject, use props and surroundings, experiment with angles, and take risks. That being said, it's important to consider the potential emotional impact of your portraits on your subject. Some emotions and experiences may be difficult or traumatic for your subject to revisit. It is important to be sensitive to their needs and feelings. Be open and honest with your subject about the emotions you're trying to capture, and make sure they feel comfortable and safe throughout the process. All right, so let's dive a little bit deeper into capturing emotions in your portraits. Establishing a connection. Well, the first and most important tip is to establish a connection with your subject. This can be done in many ways, but one of the most effective is simply by talking and listening. Take the time to get to know your subject, ask them questions about themselves, and about some of their experiences. And really listen to what they have to say. This will help them feel more comfortable and open with you, which in turn can lead to more emotional and authentic portraits. Then focus on the body language. Body language can convey just as much emotion as facial expressions. Pay attention to your subject's posture, gestures, and movements, and make sure you don't miss any important expressions or gesture. Don't rush the process and be patient with your subject. Take the time to build a connection and create a comfortable environment for them to express themselves. Consider using music or other sensory experiences to establish a connection with your subject. For example, you can play music that reflects the mood or emotions you're trying to capture, or use scents or textures to help your subject feel more relaxed and comfortable. It's important to focus on the eyes and use them as a focal point in your image. One way to do this is to use a wide aperture to create a shallow depth of field, which will blur the background and draw attention to the subject's eyes. Another way is to use lighting to create catch lights in the subject's eyes, which will add a spark of life and emotion to the image. Also, consider the angle and the position of the subject's eyes. For example, a downward gaze can create a sense of sadness or contemplation, while a direct gaze can create a sense of confidence or connection. Play with lighting and also focus on post-processing. Lighting and post-processing can have a huge impact on the emotional impact of your portraits. Consider using soft, diffused lighting to create a sense of warmth and intimacy, or harsh, directional lighting to create a sense of drama and intensity. In editing, consider using color grading or other techniques to enhance the emotional impact of the image. For example, desaturating the colors can create a sense of nostalgia and melancholy, while boosting the contrast can create a sense of power and strength. Don't be afraid to try new angles and perspectives when capturing emotions in your portraits. This can add visual interest and complexity to the image. It can also help convey a certain emotional mood. The use of color can be a powerful tool too. For example, warm colors like reds and yellows can evoke feelings of passion and energy, while cool colors like blues and greens can convey a sense of calmness or melancholy. If you haven't experimented with gels yet, I highly recommend it. Movement can add a dynamic and emotional element to your portraits. Encourage your subject to move around or perform a certain action and try capturing them in motion to convey a sense of energy and vitality. You can also use your environment. For example, photographing a subject in a peaceful, natural setting can evoke a sense of tranquility and calmness, while photographing them in an urban or industrial setting can convey a sense of grit and toughness. Finally, one of the best ways to capture emotions is to keep the conversation flowing with your subject. Ask them questions, share stories, and create a relaxed and comfortable environment in which they feel comfortable expressing themselves. And also, remember to embrace imperfection. Sometimes the most emotional and authentic portraits are the ones that aren't perfectly posed or polished. Embrace imperfections and let your subject be themselves, flaws and all. It's important to think about the entire scene, not just the subject's expressions. Consider the background, props, surroundings, and how they can contribute to the emotional impact of the image. For example, a subject standing alone in a stark, empty room can create a sense of isolation, while a subject surrounded by friends or family can create a sense of belonging and connection. Similarly, a subject holding a cherished object or surrounded by items of personal significance can create a sense of nostalgia or sentimentality. Difficult word to say. And remember, it's all about practice, practice, practice. Capturing emotions in your portraits takes practice and experience. Don't be discouraged if your early attempts don't turn out as expected. Keep practicing and experimenting, and you'll soon find your own unique style and approach. But before we wrap up, let's talk about one final thing. It's important to always respect your subject's privacy and autonomy. Make sure you have their consent to take and use their photo, and be transparent about how and where it'll be used. Always use model release forms, and if you're unsure about whether or not you have consent, it's always better to err on the side of caution and not use the photo. By incorporating these tips and techniques into your portrait photography practice, you can create images that truly capture the emotions and essence of your subjects. Remember to be patient, open-minded, experimental, and don't be afraid to make mistakes or try new things. With time and practice, you develop your own unique style in your portraits. Capturing emotions in your portraits requires a combination of technical skill, artistic vision, and emotional intelligence. By establishing a connection with your subject, playing with lighting and composition, experimenting with different techniques and approaches, and being mindful of cultural context, you can create images that truly move and inspire your audience. Capturing emotions in your portraits can be a challenging and rewarding experience. By establishing a connection with your subject, focusing on the eyes, playing with lighting and post-processing, considering the entire scene, and using additional tips and techniques, you can create images that truly capture the essence of your subject and convey powerful emotions and feelings. Right, I hope you found these tips and techniques helpful and that you're inspired to go out and capture emotions in your own portraits. But hold on, before you go, there's just one more thing. If you enjoyed this episode and you watch or listen to this channel, do me a huge favor and become part of the 15% of the viewers of this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests and the more value we can bring to you. Okay, folks, that's it for today, and thank you so much for listening, or if you're over on YouTube, for watching this episode in full Technicolor. I spent a fair bit of time preparing for this episode, and if you enjoy the show, please do go and share it with a friend and make sure you subscribe. That really does help the show grow. So long. See you next Thursday.